All right, welcome to the very first episode of the ICIMS Signal podcast. And we wanted to make sure that we set the bar kind of high. So, in the hot seat is our new CEO, Marc Thompson. So, Marc, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Trent. Really appreciate being here.
Yeah, so no pressure. I mean, we're kind of expecting you to set the bar pretty high.
We'll see where the bar lands at the end. How about that?
Right. Well, if you don't mind, can you just tell the audience a little bit about your background?
Sure. Yeah, I have been um, operating companies and building businesses really for the last I like to say plus 30 years. It's getting closer to almost 40 years. But my career has spanned, being an operator within businesses, more recently as a CFO, very recently now as a CEO, but also spent about 25 years in the investment banking and capital markets world, including merchant banking and so forth. So a lot of exposure across industries, but all of it really in the technology space. And really for the last 30 years, I've been fully ensconced in the enterprise software world.
Yeah, and it's so nice. I mean, just selfishly, and as you know, I spent a lot of my time in finance, both as a banker and then in HR. So it's so nice to have a CEO that I can use banking terms and not have to not have to explain it. It's
Yeah.
kind of a relief for me. It's fun. Now, you have had a lot of exposure in the HR tech space, and if you were to kind of look back over your career, what are some of the patterns or lessons that you think prepared you for leading a company like iCIMS?
Well, I think actually I'm going to sort of put that into two parts,
Okay.
and let's sort of start with software technology generally, enterprise software, and specifically this category. And for that, you got to roll back the tape to 2000 when
Okay.
I was actually running in a software investment banking team at CIBC World Markets. We were hiring a brand new research analyst, a guy named Rob Mena, who pitched us on a thesis for a whole new category of software, human capital management. Well, we bought it. He launched coverage of names like ADP, Paychex, Ceridian, PeopleSoft.
Oh, wow.
And eventually, the whole thesis was there are emerging companies like RecruitSoft, which rebranded itself as Taleo when it went public, SuccessFactors, Connexa, and of course, ICIMS, which was founded about 25 years ago. I got to say, when beyond the transaction systems like payroll and HRIS, at that time, we all were kind of wondering if these newer software solutions, which were all about designing, solutions that could automate hiring, manage workforces, manage talent, we were really wondering if they were actually a thing. Well, as Rob has reminded me many times over the last 20 years, turns out they are a thing. So that's great. And it's those newer software solutions at that time that were actually, excuse me, most interesting because it really started to do two things. One, illuminate the strategic value of talent within an organization. And secondly, these tools actually provided an opportunity for talent teams and the HR teams within an enterprise to really elevate. And
Mhm.
now bring these discussions of bringing talent on into a very, very different strategic realm. So in my mind, this was the beginning of really starting to appreciate talent as a component of enterprise value.
Yeah, yeah, and we're going to get into that because that was one of the things early on whenever I joined and you were in the CFO seat, you and I were talking about that, and it was interesting to me because very few CFOs, especially, kind of understand that talent is what really drives that value creation and ultimately that enterprise value. And kind of speaking of this transition from CFO to CEO, you've spent a couple of years kind of helping shape the business as a CFO, and now stepping into the CEO role. Now, there's a little bit of a narrative out there. I mean, I just want to go ahead and let's talk about the elephant in the room that the CFO to CEO path, it's becoming very common, but it still kind of comes with this perception and stereotype, particularly around leadership style and company direction. So I want to hit it head on. What made this the next step for you that was right for you and for iCIMS? And how do you think that all the experience that you've had helping us in the CFO seat is actually going to help you in the CEO seat take us to the next level?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's possible I've had a little time to think about that. We had a company meeting shortly after I was named CEO, and that was, there were two or three of those that sort of surfaced as you'd expect. But I guess, firstly, I would say being very closely aligned with my predecessor and really architecting and executing the plans that we've established. Like, given the dynamic state of our sector and our industry, I don't think you can overestimate the value of seamlessly stepping into the role and keeping the business moving at the right pace. And 7 to 8 weeks in, what I can tell you is there's been no question that that's been the case. And I think that is valuable for ICIMS because we are building a lot of momentum and we do not want to stop. Secondly, you know, I am labeled frequently a strategic CFO. That was my prior label. Why was I a strategic CFO? Well, I came from a corporate development and capital markets background, some operations, and I had, one accounting class from a liberal arts school. So that meant that I sort of operated differently. What it really meant is I have an investor mindset. And I think as it relates to this business in particular, I have been on the other end and as CFO on the end of investing in enterprise software assets. What does it mean to purchase, to implement, to really drive value? I think that's a very helpful mindset to bring into the CEO chair because actually in the world, the way the world works and within businesses, the CEOs are not really that involved in that motion.
Mhm.
We certainly see it within our customers, and any enterprise software today gets the attention of the CFO. But I think that being the strategic CFO also means something else. I really worked very hard to deeply understand the operation from both the inside and the outside, and what really matters most to all our stakeholders, starting with our customers. And I think it's these things that are really at the very core of creating and sustaining enterprise value. I also have a lot of experience managing through transformation and change. When I mentioned some of those other companies or the history of, my sort of entree into this human capital management world, there's another sort of theme going on. 25 years ago, iCIMS was a pioneer in a thing called software as a service.
Hmm.
That was absolutely a new thing at the time, and it has become a real thing. And of course, over the last 20 to 25 years, it's become a real value creator for all businesses. Well, it's interesting that today we sit here at the next disruptive change in software technology, this thing called AI. So I
Right.
think that ability to sort of have lived through that provides an experience base that's pretty unique. And then, you know, lastly, I would say, and I you let me know, but I hope our employees and our board would say that first and foremost, I'm a leader with a lot of experience, knowledge of the business, and mostly a relentless passion for delivering great experiences for our customers, our employees, and our investors.
No, I think that's pretty dead on. And I think one of the things too, kind of the undercurrent in there, again, having been a banker, not at your level, not at the level that you were playing. I mean, I did some commercial lending. I think what made successful bankers was kind of like this intellectual curiosity of really understanding how the bank works because you were evaluating risk. And I think that that's a pretty unique, I guess, kind of background that you're bringing of you've already done all the work of kind of understanding, okay, what's all the connective tissue. And so now you're, bringing that knowledge. And from an employee standpoint, it's kind of nice though, having someone in the CEO, and I think you know me well enough to know I don't flatter anyone. I just call a spade a spade. But there is something cathartic and easing about knowing someone that is very intimately aware of customer interactions, the operations,
Yeah.
kind of getting into that leadership chair, especially considering all the fun stuff that AI is causing. But I do want to double click on something. So you have mentioned a couple of times, and I already warned you that I'm writing a new book, and I stole this, but I did give you credit. This term of enterprise value creation. So when you say driving enterprise value, like what does that mean for you, and what does that look like?
Yeah. So to be honest, most frequently it actually doesn't mean the financial metric, which
Mhm.
is equity value plus debt minus cash, just to prove I didn't
I
know it.
remember.
Um, what when I use the term, what I really mean is generally I'm referring to all the components that create a valuable enterprise. Great products, happy customers, engaged employees, efficient business models, scalable business models, scalable processes, investments in the right systems, all of it together. And I think that sort of comes back to your prior question. um, I have spent a career, from think about it as outside investor, and advisor to inside operator, being able to visualize how all of these come together at a
Mhm.
very, operational level, right onto what does it actually mean for that financial metric at the end of the day. And I
Mhm.
think that is a pretty, I think people who can do that are very helpful within an organization, because you can literally help understand what every component is doing in concert to drive overall value. I think that's a very helpful skill. But to me, it really means unpacking all of that into its various components, if you will.
So, how does that definition affect the way that you think about leading ICIMS? And I'm going to go one step further. And how does that affect how you think we should be interacting with our clients?
That's a great question. So, well, from the day I got here, I was doing what I always do, which is, um, understand how where value sits within ICIMS, unpacking the components of enterprise value, and actually working to do two things. One, ensuring that all of those components were aligned to our evolving corporate objectives. That was sort of
Hmm.
job one. Make sure that the pieces are working towards a greater goal. And then two, focus on continuous improvement, because
Right.
every element of the business can get better. And if you are continuously improving and you are aligned to the right set of objectives, by definition, you will be creating value for all of your stakeholders. Again, customers, employees, investors. So I think, you know, that understanding the business at that level,
Mhm.
breaking it into its components, allows you to then analyze and think about, well, what should the right objectives be? What are we trying to accomplish? And then, of course, what are the strategies to be able to execute to achieve that? If that does that make sense?
Oh, it makes complete sense. And there's like this reverse engineering aspect that I think is
Correct.
overlooked in companies in the C-suite and sometimes with CHROs. I mean, they should be leading that. Where's the value being created? Because that's going to determine how you structure your workforce. What technology are you using? Should this be a human or should this be technology? Which I know I'm having a lot of conversations with in the market with prospects and with clients, just trying to help them understand and evaluate that question. So, do you think that companies sometimes separate talent strategy from business strategy when the two are really kind of interconnected?
I think yes, and I think that has over my career. I think that's changed and it's got a whole lot better. But I do think it still happens, and I'm probably biased, right? Because I come from a world of financial services and software development, where your most precious assets frequently go home at night, or I guess in today's world, they show up to the office periodically, but it's not a business of hard assets and monetizing that. So the people really made the business in many respects. But I think that's true of many businesses, including asset intensive businesses. And what I do know to be true is, in my opinion, the human beings, the talent pool is the most strategic investment you can make, because if you think back to sort of that framework of meeting objectives and strategies to achieve, you cannot execute business strategies to drive to desired business outcomes without people. So
Hmm.
it follows that having the best people deployed in the right roles at the right time is always going to create value. That's my simple framework.
Yeah, it's a very simple equation that so many people
Yeah.
overlook. And one of the things that I find really interesting about the whole AI conversation is that it's usually framed around productivity alone, but you're talking about enterprise value a lot more broadly. So like how does that enterprise value shape the way that you think about AI, both, how we use it in the company, but also how are we going to put it into our product in a way that drives that enterprise value?
Well, I think you mean my evolving thoughts, because
Evolving, right.
we
Well, yeah,
things are moving very fast.
yeah.
But I think this is, I think it's the same the way we think about our business internally and the way we think about delivering value and products to our customers. Um, it's sort of time to value creation, and then increases enterprise value. So sort of two things, right? Time
Mhm.
and actual value creation, AI can work really fast. So theoretically, you can optimize any one of those components of enterprise value that we've sort of sputtered out here at a higher velocity. So,
Hmm.
that's time to value, if you will. At the same time, we're starting to see meaningful productivity gains that come from helping businesses grow faster, um, and also where they might be able to generate more profitability because they can do more with the same or less. So those are also components of enterprise value. Those, though, are really all about lifting. If you grow faster and you are more profitable, that will increase your enterprise value. So I think both of those, we think about that way, or we think about that framework certainly internally to iCIMS, where we are, developing our own strategies and frameworks and sort of living into that. But we also think about that on the product side, and we
Hmm.
can get into that probably a little bit more down the road in the conversation. But it is, how are our products helping our customers drive their enterprise value in two ways: faster and also lift.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm also, I mean, I probably should insert, I like to be grounded. I mentioned the being around and not even being early in my career. I was mid-career when the SaaS evolution came. And that created a whole lot of value. Software has been doing these things, faster time to value creation, more value creation, i.e. operating leverage in the business. It's been doing that for 40 to 50 years. I
Hmm.
just see AI as this next phase of, it's a meaningful step function in our ability to create value, leveraging a new technology. But you bring it back to our business, again, back to our customers. Our solutions leverage AI to more quickly hire the right people at the right time in the right roles to accelerate time to value and also increase overall value. I mean, it kind of keeps coming back to that simple equation because I think that's not changing with AI.
Hmm.
The equation
No.
is the equation.
So, how do we balance speed and efficiency with maintaining like human trust in the hiring process? Because it's a very delicate balance.
Yeah. Well, I think there are a number of things that we think about in this regard. First of all, AI is 100% increasing
Hmm.
hiring velocity. So that again is time to value. But it comes back to our philosophy around AI, which is really to meet our customers where they are, and really enabling them to adopt AI that makes sense for their business at that point in time. And I would say that today, most of our customers, if not all of our customers, are very comfortable in adopting AI to drive what I'll call better automation.
Hmm.
But we believe in the future, there's going to be much more intelligent systems that are actually supporting humans in making hiring decisions. And we expect that will come over time, and that will drive even more strategic value.
Mm, makes sense. And I've had the benefit of traveling with Courtney Dutter, our chief legal counsel, doing a couple of market visits. You'll get a kick out of this. I kind of opened each of the different sessions and say that I would give them two truths and an apology. So the two truths was my experience, and the apology was that apparently my jokes and everything that I gave at the previous had somehow gotten back to the C-suite, that now I have to travel with our chief legal counsel to keep me under control. um, but Courtney kind of brings something into this conversation. I love the way that she frames it, is that the acquisition that we made in 2018, we were very fortunate, one, in the acquisition, but also two, they already had a responsible AI
Yeah,
framework that we just continued to build on. And that was one of the things that whenever I joined a little over a year ago, that I feel like we don't talk about enough. Like, we're the only one that's certified. We build things that we know have gone through this code of ethics, through this governance board, and this framework that's been audited. So I think that that's a nice way too, that we really need to probably start talking more about how do we balance this, going all in on AI, but doing it responsibly with the human at the heart.
it is. It's a core tenet of every conversation we're having with our customers, and I do agree with you. I think we're leading the market in this regard,
Mhm.
and you can't underestimate the value of that. Having said that, our customers are at varying degrees along their own journey. with the
Right.
adoption of this new technology and what it means. And it means different things to different customers in different industries, right?
Mhm.
So it's a huge area of focus for us. And Courtney does a really nice job of framing it out for folks. And honestly, we can't get her in front of enough people because I think that Courtney is a thought leader around topics that are super timely today because I don't it's been AI has been in the market long enough where people are not just sort of looking at it from afar and saying it's interesting. Everybody's activating around
Right.
it. So
Yeah.
it's really timely and it's very important to us.
Yeah, I always introduce Courtney as the attorney I always wanted whenever I was a practitioner. Like she's just, she's got the business mindset. She's got a,
Yeah,
strong legal background. So we're very fortunate. And I hope she's listening and she remembers that the next time I mess something up.
I'm sure she is.
All right. So I want to shift gears because one of the other things that you've talked to me a couple of times, and I again, thinking of you as a CFO and then hearing some of the things, I'm like, this is very, very different. You talk about frontline hiring completely differently. You say that it is not just a recruiting problem, that it's a hiring problem. So, that's a very unique perspective. What do you think executives miss the most about the frontline workforce challenges?
Well, I think in my opinion, the frontline workforce and challenges associated with that that's a business problem first and a
Hmm.
talent problem secondly. It is a talent problem, but I actually think the business problem is
Yeah.
where you should begin, right? So in any business that deploys a lot of frontline workers, those teams frequently are a very big component of the business, and in some cases they are the business, right? So
Right.
not having a fully staffed frontline workforce, that can negatively impact your ability to generate revenue, customer satisfaction, which leads to
Mhm.
customer retention, your cost profile. All of these are big implications for the exec team and certainly the board. So I sort of frame it that way.
Yeah, and I think I'm going to just tack something else on that. A lot of frontline workers, if you nail that experience, again, right person in the right role at the right time with the right skill set, and you continue to nurture that, that's your base for the kind of that next level. Like that's the entry point
100%.
into the organization. I mean, there are a lot of people that started out at one level and now they've stayed in the industry and they've continued to progress. So I think
100%.
that's often overlooked. Would you agree?
Totally. I totally getting hiring right is often
Period.
overlooked, right? But I couldn't agree more. And I think, the solutions we're rolling out, I think really enable you to be effectively in the market all the time,
Mhm.
nurturing candidates, if you will, or at least understanding what's available to be able to, again, get make sure you're getting the right ones at the right time in the right roles. Then obviously whole nother story once they're inside in terms of development.
Absolutely. So do you think that, I mean, being in the C-suite, do you think that the frontline topic that it deserves a little bit more board level attention?
I do. I do because I think I think those businesses that are very forward thinking, where they deploy a lot of frontline workers, I think they probably already are doing that. I think, unfortunately, in many cases, you know, um, the board is seeing, you know, discussion and metrics that go back to hiring metrics as opposed to, again, the derivative implications on the business, right?
Mhm.
This is where my pitch to our customers and anybody who's really got frontline workers as a meaningful component of the business model, the CHRO needs to be partnering closely with the CFO, the COO, the people who are, managing that particular component of the workforce to always be developing the context around business impact
Mhm.
that the front line has. So therefore, when you start to do it better and drive more value, you understand the implications it has. Again, back to your P&L and value creation. I think boards care a lot about that because it is a big component of enterprise value.
So, kind of being in the industry that we're in, what role does technology play in helping organizations move from reactive hiring to workforce readiness? And before you answer the question, I'll ask it again. I do want to make a clarification because internally we talk a lot about frontline hiring.
Mm,
I'm very aware that most people that have been in recruiting, frontline hiring, they may be kind of scratching their head going, I think I know what that means. Let me clear it up. We're talking about high volume hiring.
Yes.
So we just kind of look at it as that's the front line of the business. A lot of times that's the face that your clients know. They don't know people that are knowledge workers in the back office. They think Best Buy is the person that helped me buy the last TV. So high volume, frontline hiring, those are the same things. We kind of use those interchangeably. So just want to
Yeah.
make sure that that was clear. But back to the question.
Right.
What? Sorry, I should have. I had a note is like make sure that I clarify that on the front, and I just jumped right on to the next question. So back to the question:
Yeah.
what role does tech play in helping organizations get out of reactive mode whenever it comes to high volume or frontline hiring into kind of a workforce readiness
Yeah.
stand?
Well, I think at ICIMS we have kind of we're addressing it really on two fronts. So let's start with frontline, right? I mean, I believe our frontline solution it streamlines the processes in ways that it enables companies to be always in the market. Which you're talking when you talk about high volume hiring, which you didn't mention, are the stats around that turnover rates in these workforces can be 50 to 100%. So
Yes.
you're constantly turning over a very precious component of your business. So you need to be in the market at all times. You don't just like dip in and come out. It's not like, senior to mid-level white collar jobs. So very
Yeah.
different uh, process. And in a world where it is very competitive to attract that talent, I think having solutions like that enabling you to be consistently and constantly in the market, that's part of the answer to your question. I think another solution we bring, of course, is our CXM solution. That
Hmm.
allows you to sort of mine a pool of existing candidates from a variety of sources where you're able to engage with them. It could be jobs open up or more jobs open up. I have silver medalists, gold, bronze medalists. You can keep your brand relevant in front of them. All of those things through a variety of engagements that keep the world of your candidate pool, if you will, warm and engaged. I think that's another way in which we can help on that front.
Yeah. At a previous stant stint, I think is the word I'm looking for. It was large enterprise, and there was a high volume component, and we were moving from one ATS to the other, and we had only had that one ATS for maybe 5 or 6 years. And I remember, you have to do the export and the import of all the data transfer and everything. And I was going through it with the implementation. I was like, what's the total number of people that we had in the system? And it was like 65, 75,000 people in 6 years.
It's crazy.
And my head exploded because, whenever I would meet with the frontline or the high volume recruiting team, it was like, oh, we got to go and recruit. We got to go and recruit. And so I pulled them all together, and I had one slide that said 75,000. I said, anyone want to tell me what that is? And it was like average base salary of a branch manager. I mean, there were all kinds of things. I said, that's how many people have been sitting in our system that you have not gone and sourced. That is a gold mine of talent. And so we didn't have a CXM at the time. It was not something that was a thing. But we turned around and started looking and re-engaging some of those candidates. Because I mean, if you think about it, Mark, these people have taken the time to apply in
Uh-huh.
a most of the time crappy application process. So they've dedicated some time.
Yeah.
They've showed that they're interested in your brand, and some of them have even talked to team members. So there's some feedback on their interview. Like, why would you not go back to them? And I love that our sourcing agent
Yeah.
that that sits right on top of that CXM and goes
Or
and
it's parts.
pulls, yeah, goes and
It,
pulls that gold out, right?
it is no different than an enterprise software company,
No,
right? Where, as you know, I always say, within our business, I love keeping customers. It's great to bring in new customers. It's even better to keep a customer.
yeah.
Make sure that you're engaged and they're engaged and you're delivering value to them. So it's totally makes sense. It's a very rational and very economically sound way to approach the problem.
Yeah, and it also helps some of the retention
100.
problems that you mentioned earlier, that constant turnover. If you reach out to me out of the blue and go, "Hey, you applied for this.
Yeah.
There's another role."
Yeah.
Oh, I'm engaged,
Yeah.
assuming that the skill set and all that aligns. So let's shift gears again. I've got you held captive, so I'm going to squeeze as much as I can out of you. All right. So one thing about iCIMS that's really interesting is the market that we're in.
Mhm.
There's very few of us, and I mean talent specific focused platforms left out there, especially after all the consolidation. And I think I shared with you at Transform in Vegas. It was really interesting to me. It's been a while since I've had to work a booth, but I was in there and I was talking to people that were coming in, and there were a lot that were on product suites, like an HCM, and they were looking at us because they're like, the HCM's great, but the TA's an afterthought. So how, and just kind of looking at the market, like how does being a TA focused platform influence the direction of the company going forward now that you're at the helm?
Well, um, I think first of all, we've always differentiated ourselves by being that best of breed talent acquisition system. There is no bigger, better ATS in the market than ours, and
Mhm.
that's great real estate to be in, and it also gives us, I think, a great position to lead the market. Where and I'm speaking specifically to TA, over the next several years, particularly leveraging this AI transformation that's underway. I think we will always differentiate ourselves from, the consolidators by being really, really good at this singular function of attracting the best talent. Again, hitting that simple equation. Um, but I think where we think or where we look at the market going over the next several years, we do think AI is going to transform the way hiring is done. We feel like we transformed the way hiring was done in our last 25 years. I think it's going to change again. And there's probably really three parts to the evolution. The first is the one that we've been talking a little bit around the edges, but it's a tech transformation where we're leveraging conversation and agentic technology to accomplish things that weren't really possible in the past at a higher velocity. This is that sort
Mhm.
of better automation I referred to. The second one, or the second component of evolution, if you will, I think is really it's much more related to the work itself. More agents will do more work,
Mhm.
and they can take care of what in our processes. There's a lot of heavy administrative processes. The
Right.
agents can do that work. I think that's coming also. That's very much here in the short to midterm. And I think the one that's really beginning to emerge, though, and our chief product officer, Eric Connors, does such a nice job of really thinking about this. Obviously, that's his job, and he does it well.
We
But
would hope he's thinking about it.
the way he articulates it, I think, is really well. I'm going to butcher it probably a little bit, but the third is that evolution that's really beginning to emerge. I think is probably the most transformative, and it's really around the persona. So, and that's the persona on all sides of the hiring equation, if you will. So, as an example, the frontline candidate we've talked about using our solution, that candidate is now able to do things that traditionally were reliant upon having a hiring manager being present, right? That could
Mhm.
be the hiring manager answering questions about the role. We can now do that in system. Completing the application process or parts of it, gathering an initial assessment, even doing, an initial interview.
Mhm.
Those are big gains for both sides of that equation, both the candidate and also the hiring manager. At the same time, that hiring manager is now freed up and has tools available to do work around developing the job rec on their own in a very not in a forms sort of historical way, but conversationally, if you will, with better tools and technology. So it's not just a job rec; it's developing the job description. It's reviewing that pool of candidates that
Right.
already applied.
Mhm.
All of that frees up time for another persona in the equation. That's the recruiter. And that enables them to really be focusing on the things they really enjoy and do really well, which is building relationships, evaluating talent, you know, being there at the back end around the hiring decision, et cetera. So, I feel like the world we are at this place where we're going to have another step function of change. I think iCIMS is incredibly well positioned to execute on that. And I think our vision, is perfectly suited to really again, kind of drive this next wave.
Makes sense, and it's everything that you're talking about, we actually have data that we recently released in the definitive guide for AI adoption that we partnered with Aptitude. And one of the things that we looked at is the different personas. I'm just going to kind of focus on the recruiter. We asked them, like, in each stage, so screening, using communication, assessments, interviewing, all of that. What, how much time on average per recruiter per week did they save time? And like the bottom row was 5 to 10 hours, and it was in the 30s. Like 30% of the respondents said this is what we're seeing. And I celebrated that. I was like, okay, fantastic. We're already seeing a lift. But naturally, the next question went to what are they doing with the time? And to your point, the top three that came in was one, spending more time nurturing relationships with candidates.
Yep.
Second, deepening relationships with hiring managers. And the third is kind of leveraging both of those to develop strategy and analyze the data. So we're already starting to see that this technology is lifting that recruiter out of the process and putting it back into the people, which any good recruiter that I've ever worked with, worked for, or managed, all of them wanted to spend more time with the people. They were bogged down by the process.
Well, and I'd say the people also includes the people in the business understanding the strategic, operational, and financial objectives and how they're going to do their part,
Hmm.
execute the strategies to achieve those objectives. And I think, in a funny way, I've kind of come full circle in my career. 25 years ago, iCIMS was founded. I was
Hmm.
working with companies who were, you know, at the forefront of automating elements of the process so we could change the way we were hiring, not only the way we were hiring, but also onboarding,
Hmm.
also developing talent internally, measuring their performance, all of that. AI is going to be a step function game changer. I mentioned early on in the conversation those tools, I do think one put a spotlight on talent as a component of strategic value creation and enterprise value, and two, elevated or created the opportunity to elevate the talent team and the CHRO in the overall conversation within the
Hmm.
C-suite and at the board level. I think many took advantage of that, and that has been the case, but not universally. I think AI might actually help everybody in that
Hmm.
regard. And I that's why we think it's a really big game changer, and we, of course, want to be leading that market.
Yeah, completely agree. It's exciting. So the narrative out there is that AI and automation is going to replace recruiting, but our data and how we're looking at our product strategy is more about elevating the role rather than eliminating it. So really,
Faster, better. Faster,
yes,
better.
yes, we are creating an augmented recruiting experience. So all right, I want to close it out. I like to call it a mic drop moment. Um, if there was one message that you would want the market to hear about iSIMS right now, what is it?
iCIMS is going to continue to lead the market, and we want to serve as a trusted advisor to our customers as they really lean into this next evolution of hiring, which is sure to drive their enterprise value. That's it.
Love it. All right. Well, with that mic drop, I will let you out of the hot seat and hopefully you won't hold this against me later on.
This has been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope you'll bring me back.
I will. I will. I will take you up on it. Well, Mark, thank you for carving out some time. I really appreciate it. For all of you that this is our first episode, make sure that you like and subscribe and share. We're going to be really kind of digging into a lot of meaty topics. We're going to bring on clients. We're going to bring on other SMEs, analysts. Everything is kind of geared toward helping you be able to make the most successful talent strategy for your organization. And in Mark's words, help drive enterprise value. So we will see you next time.
Take care.